Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you have all been waiting for. Today, we're diving into one of the most highly requested videos on the channel. With the help of Ludia themselves, we heard your feedback. We saw your requests. So we fired up the lab and pulled some of the community's most wanted creatures onto the analysis platform in our shiny new lab, by the way, which you got a glimpse of in a previous episode. And what comes next? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we will be bringing back not one, not two, but 5 lost yet beloved creatures from past metas and giving them a complete makeover. With new stats, abilities, and playstyles, each one of them will only have one objective. Each one has a purpose, each one has a role, and each one is here to reclaim their place in the ecosystem. So grab your snacks and maybe a bowl of pasta, because we're about to cover that bitch red with all the carnage about to take place. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Before we get into the fun stuff, let's go over a few ground rules which will be important later on. The goal of this video is simple. It is to deliver buffs to each creature that not only match their intended playstyles, but also respects balance. In a previous video, I talked about the meta being heavily imbalanced, and needless to say, once that video came out, a lot of people seemed to agree with me. Well, most of them anyway. So this time, we're taking the current meta into account, and each creature will only have one clear objective. Take down at least one of, if not more, of the current big 5 before the video ends. Atromalistes, Spinotops, Gragonath, Ampelorex, and Mastodontosaurus. But here is the twist. They can't just become the next big 5 of their own. No. Each one will also come with its own set of counters. No shortcuts, no broken loops, and no monkey business will be taking place. Oh, and one more thing. If these 5 fail, we will have no choice but to unleash our own hybrid at the end of the video, the C-Rex, to take on the role of Thanos and to do it himself. So, with that out of the way, I think it is time to head back into the lab, which is a place we've seen glimpses of before in a previous episode. And hey, if Batman gets to call his hideout the Batcave, I think it's only fair that I call mine the Tiger's Den. So, computer, hit the lights. Let's see who our lucky 5 are today. Ah, lovely. Some great candidates. Ooh, so many choices. What do I want to go for first? Ah, yes, this guy. First up, in black stripes, the Parasauthops. A couple days ago, I put out a poll asking what you guys would like to see buffed, and while the poll numbers seemed to favor Alberto, the comments favored Parasauthops overall in terms of design and overall playstyle. So, Parasauthops was our first candidate and the first creature to be on the analysis platform. The buff follows as such: 4,950 health, 1,500 attack, keeping the same stat, giving you 116 speed to counterbalance Junior, and giving it 15% armor that it lost. We will also be giving a few changes to its overall kit, with Alert Cunning Survival. Essentially, this is the same as Tough Creep Cunning Strike, however on both Threatened and Secure, you will be increasing your armor and healing by 15 and 25% respectively. For the next ability, we took out Alert Instant Heal and replaced it with something called Revenge Fierce Impact. It's the same as Precise Fierce Impact, however on Revenge, it is a priority, you target all opponents, and you reduce their damage by 100% whilst granting yourself cheat death for 2 turns. We gave this a little bit of a differentiation from the next revenge move we will reveal shortly. We also decided to change Greater Group Heal to something called Reinforcing Group Heal. This is the same as Greater Group Heal on Secure, however now you grant yourself a shield for 50% for 2 turns for attacks, whilst increasing your own armor for 30%, and you reduce their speed and remove speed increase for the opponent on 75%. On Threatened, however, this is a completely different story. You follow the same format, however now your shield goes up to 75% and your armor is increased by 50. This is now a cooldown of 1, and you also reduce their healing for 100% on Threatened. So on Secure and Threatened, both play a little bit differently, whilst Threatened has that Alert Instant Heal niche on it. Going on to the final and last ability on this kit, Determining Revenge Rampage. On non-revenge, it is the same as Resilient Revenge Rampage. However, on revenge, it is a priority. You break shields, bypass armor, and you attack for 2.5x, afflicting the user for 50%, and you reduce their speed by 100. This pretty much is the differentiation from Revenge Fierce Impact, so either you choose output or survivability. Going on to the next lesser abilities, we gave it minor healing counter instead of counter power heal, courtesy of Parasauthops Lux. We also gave it definite fierce swap and strike, just to ensure you do damage no matter what. And just to make sure that you're not total swap and fodder, we gave this thing increased blessing on escape, courtesy of the Proto Lux. This creature is now going to be a beast in both Fraternities and PvP. However, let's find out just how well it does in the ranking side of things. On the synergy and competitiveness side of things, I gave this a 5 out of 5. It will be a beast in tournaments and will find its home there. However, in Arena, it might be a little bit of a different story with a potential 4 out of 5. The synergy works well for it because it can work as a swapper or a revenge killer, and because of a lot of its abilities working in tandem with each other, it easily grants it that 5 out of 5 placement. On the fun and flexibility side, I think no matter who you are, you're going to like using this creature, and because it is a good swapper, that plug and play option is there. In terms of head-to-head, I gave it a 3 out of 5. It mainly relies on being a revenge killer to do the job properly. However, needless to say, it is still going to put out a lot of output. And on the adjustment side, this is a very hard creature to buff, and giving it any small changes will probably not do much for it unless you really want to go big and go home with this. So for that, I'm going to give it a 1 out of 5 on the adjustment scale. And for a boost profile, assuming you're at tier 2, you'll be getting 8,600-ish health with 3,100 attack, making you a formidable swapper on the field. We will now be downloading this first bit of information to reveal at the end of the video. So, let's see who our next creature on today's list is. Show us what it is. And it is Ardontognathus. Perfect choice, a favorite unique of mine. Let's dive into it. The underrated Ardontognathus makes itself present on this list and is the second creature featured today, mainly because I don't have any excuse. It's my favorite unique and I love using it, and I used it back in the day. So here's a little bit of a buff to all the Ardontognathus haters out there, and the buff follows as such. 3,750 HP, 1,350 attack, 130 speed, 0% armor, 30% crit chance, and 150 critical damage. This will make sense once we get into the abilities right now. So, Cunning Fierce Strike will be gaining a critical component with 60% crit chance increase for 2 turns, 2 attacks. Pretty basic. However, also courtesy of my friend Wassup for this buff, I want you all to thank him when you do see him. Prolonged Defensive Side Flap makes itself present on this kit because of how well of a combo move it is, because it is now going to increase your shield by 100% for this turn for attacks, being a cooldown of 3. It's about to make sense right now. As we move into Definite Alert Frenzy, this move combos extremely well with Prolonged Defensive Side Flap because now it erases all the issues Ardontognathus had troubles with prior, being dodgers and shield when it comes to this ability. So now you break shields and you erase their dodge on both secure and threatened. So moving into the last move of this kit, Heavy Shattering Rampage. It is basically a defense shattering rampage that decelerates the opponent by 30%. Nothing too crazy there. Moving into the lesser abilities of this creature, which will also propel it forward, we buffed Minimal Critical Counter to increase your crit chance by 10% from 5. And because previously it has Alert the Flock, we want this thing to heal no matter what upon swapping in. So for that, we're giving it Evasive Heal, courtesy of the Arctovasilas. And while its Unescape was decent, we wanted to up its survivability just a tad bit more with Bracing Invincibility on Escape, which increases your armor for 25% and gives you a full shield for 100%. This creature now does a lot and definitely fits the role of a good Fierce. Let's see how it does in the ranking performance. Oh, and before we move on, I should probably add we gave this thing full immunity to stun and swap prevention just to further allow its playstyle. Now, without further ado, we can see its performance. This Flying Frenzy Flyer gets a 5 out of 5 on synergy, competitiveness, and fun. No matter what, I think this is something that everyone is going to enjoy using, whether they're on the opposing end of it or behind it. On a competitiveness note, it finally fixes all the issues it dealt with prior, and it is finally a good fierce creature, which is something that Trichovenator and Draco Intrepidus before it did decently for about a couple weeks before they got faded out ultimately. On the flexibility side of things, your plug and play options, and on the head-to-head, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5. It is still a flock creature at the end of the day, so it will suffer from dispersed abilities. However, I think Prolonged Defensive Side Flap can buy it a little bit of time just so it can dish back its own big hit. And for the adjustment side of things, I don't see this thing getting a nerf, and I don't see this thing getting a buff, because giving it any sort of little changes, especially to Prolonged Defensive Side Flap, would make it a top 3 creature. And for the boost profile, I'll give it a 10-20 build, granting the user 6,392 health and 2,700 attack. You will be doing so much damage, especially with that critical increase counter. So, without further ado, we've just wrapped up Ardontognathus, and we will now see what the computer reveals for our third contestant of the day. Computer, show us who we've got. If you've seen the comments on my channel lately, you'll see that a lot of people have been requesting for an Ankylos Lux buff. And because of that, we decided to bring the glowing Ankylosaur on the analysis platform and give it the treatment it so desperately deserves. This was a very hard buff to accomplish, and I didn't really have a clear motive for what I wanted this thing to kill. But because Atromalistes just came into the meta, we decided that's going to be our new test bunny, and we decided to give the buff as follows. 4,950 HP, this allows you to tank that Berserk without succumbing to a potential crit. We added 50 extra attack, giving it 1,350, and gave it 3 extra speed. Moving into its abilities, we decided to give it something called Bulwarking Superior Vulnerability. It's basically superior vulnerability, but you increase your armor by 15% when you use this. Moving into the next ability of this kit, this is ultimately what will be killing Atromalistes. We changed Hostile Glow quite a bit, but because this was so hard to do without making it ridiculously busted, the move follows as such. Act Last component will be added just so you can counter Atro's own Act Last, and we will be giving this thing an affliction of specifically 25%, just so you don't overdo the damage on other creatures. You will now also be reducing their speed and armor by 50%. This allows you to get the jump on Atro and kill it, assuming you don't already do it with this. You will now also be imposing vulnerability, as you do previously, and you keep your 1.5x damage. You also shield by 50% for 2 turns for attacks, and you taunt, as if that matters. Going into the next move called Alert Penetrating Strike, it's still a priority move. However, now you nullify all positive effects, you attack 1x, you afflict for 100%, and you have a 75% chance to dodge, which you will be able to penetrate your opponents and increase your shield by 50%. This is a delay of 1, but a cooldown of 3. However, on Threatened, you'll be penetrating your opponent a lot more when you break their shields and attack twice, afflict 100, and have a 100% chance to stun. You'll also be increasing your own shield by 100% on this turn, and you'll be increasing your healing, or rather you'll be healing for 0.25x, which is, I think, half of your counter attack. Oh fuck. Moving on to the next ability of this kit, we got Resilient, Blighted, Rampage, and Run. So this is essentially the move it already has, but now fuck, I completely threw myself off there. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, you now have an instant hit. You automatically swap, you give your shield 50%, however now you will be reducing their healing by 100% for 2 turns. This was just a little bit something just to deal with the Gragonith and Palorax potentially. Moving on to the lesser abilities of this kit, we gave it Ferocious Counter Healing Strike, courtesy of the Conchatosaurus and Monolamoth. Going on to the next ability, we got Alert Disarming Stun. Pretty much this has exactly what Ankylos Lux already has, but we now added a reduced armor component on both secure and threatened. On secure, you're going to reduce their armor by 50%, and on threatened, you'll be reducing it by 100. This will hopefully help you out against something like Spinotops, Imperatosuchus, and Masto. And it also keeps group invincibility on escape. We also gave it a couple of resistance changes, gave it a 50% afflict resistance, and we decided to give it no stun resistance because otherwise it will kill Dragonith. Now, moving on to the ranking portion of this creature. As Ankylos Lux penetrates its way onto the analysis platform, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on synergy. You know what, fuck it, just to make this go a little bit quicker, I gave it a 4 out of 5 on both synergy, head-to-head, and flexibility. This creature benefits greatly off that Act Last component, and because it is made to kill Atromalistes, something that's not present in the meta at the moment, a lot of players will be taking advantage of that, and it is going to find a spot comfortably on the top 18. Moving into the competitiveness side, I'll give it a 5 out of 5. This is because it is made to kill Atromalistes. Again, like I said, something not present in the current meta. And for a fun, I give it 3.5 out of 5. No matter how you look at it, it has a very fun and versatile kit and kind of fits to what it used to have back when it reigned king, and because of that, it gets the ranking it deserves. Moving on to the adjustment side, because of how delicate this creature was to buff, and because giving it any sort of little changes could stifle its placement, I decided to give it a 2 out of 5. The best thing you can do is remove one of its resistances or a little bit of its stats, just to balance it out a tad bit more, but every single one of its moves is kind of perfect for what it needs to do. And for a boost profile, I'll give it 8,603 health with 2,700 attack. We will now be downloading this information into the computer, and we will reveal its matchups at the end. It is finally time to reveal our 5th contestant of this video, the lucky number 5, and to all people who wanted this buffed, here it is. Computer, release our 5th creature of the day. Arctovasilas is no teddy bear. This thing had its reign in the meta a few years back and nothing was able to stop it. However, the Bear King left us a little too soon, so we will be giving it the treatment it deserves. While the 2 previous buffs, Ardontognathus and Parasauthops, fit 2 niches, being a good fierce flock or a good revenge killer, Arctovasilas will now have its first current objective, kill some of the big 5, and that will be Spinotops and Ampelorex. Let's make that happen. We will be buffing its health, giving it 50 extra. However, to kill Imperatosuchus, I decided to give it 1,600, because otherwise it would need a crit to do so, since there are a ton of 10,000 health Imperatosuchus running rampant in the meta. The resistances also got a few changes. We made it immune to speed decrease and gave it 75% resistance to stun, whilst giving it a 50% armor reduction resistance, just to help it out with its kit and survive a little bit extra. Moving on to the moves themselves, we added a hit all component to Cenozoic Smack, and on top of that, just like Parasauthops, you will now increase your healing by 25%, adding an extra 25% shield on top of that. Moving on to Alert Arctic Blast, we will also be giving this move a little bit of love. We decided to base this off of Saurophaganax's Piercing Taunting Bulwark, so now you cleanse armor reduction and increase your own by 25%, whilst breaking shields and bypassing dodge. We didn't want to have this bypass armor as that would be a little too OP, and it is still a non-priority. However, when you get to Threatened, all of that changes, so now it does become a priority. You do bypass absorb, and you break shields and bypass armor along with dodge, while the attack gets up to 1.75x. You will also be afflicting for 50% one turn, and you have a 75% chance to stun for one turn. And on top of that, you will also be reducing the opponent's speed for 100% and reducing their armor for 50% while imposing vulnerability. Alert Persistent Group Shield will be getting the biggest change, and this is what will be killing Impelorex and Spinotops. Persistent Group Shields will be getting an Act Last component on Secure, just to make absolute sure that Impelorex cannot stifle you whatsoever, and on top of that, you will be cleansing your reduced damage and healing for 0.5x. The rest of the move is exactly the same, just to what Arctovasilas currently has. However, that is all about to change on Threatened, because now you will be healing your full attack stat, along with reducing the opponent's armor by 50% and reducing their healing by 100. The rest of the move is standard to what Arctovasilas has already. Moving on to its final move of the kit, we will be giving it something called Devastating Claws. This is going to be doing the damage to Impelorex, Spino, and essentially everything else that gets in the way, because now you cleanse reduced damage, you bypass dodge, bypass armor, and attack for 3x. This is probably the riskiest move of the kit and arguably can be made for a nerf. However, if you do want to kill Spino and Impelo, these are just the obstacles you have to pass in order to get there. You will now be increasing your armor by 35% for 2 turns, 4 attacks, as shown. However, just to make it a little bit more balanced, we added a delay and a cooldown of 2 to this move. Transitioning into the lesser abilities of this kit, I took out Counter Power Heal because useless, and I replaced it with something called Counter Growl. This breaks shields, bypasses dodge, and attacks for half your damage stat, whilst healing by 20% of your HP, which is why we kept the health relatively the same, because we don't want this thing being an annoying ass heal spammer. Swap in Alert Reversal is also something that makes itself present, because now it increases your speed by 25% and breaking the opponent's shields. It also increases your own for 50%. However, on Threatened, you get a shield of 100%, you break their shields, and you have a 75% chance to stun them. We also left Vitalize on Escape in the kit. So, Arctovasilas is a pretty big powerhouse. However, how does that compare when we rank it? Well, putting it on the platform now, we're going to give it a 3 out of 5 on the synergy scale. The swap in Alert Reversal helps in giving it a little bit more versatility in how it wants to be played, and for that reason, it gets that ranking. Next up, we'll be giving Head-to-Head and Flexibility a 4 out of 5. It fits the role of a good Resilient and Tank Buster to an extent, and we're confident that it would make it into top 8 teams with this buff, assuming it were to get added. On the competitive side of things, we're going to be bold and give it a 5 out of 5. Again, like I said, it fits the role of a good tank, and it is able to kill a lot of the big 5. Or rather, it is able to kill a good amount of the big 5, but do damage to the rest of them. So that is why we're confident that it will make that spot as a top 8 contender. And for the fun side of things, it is a little bit subjective, but we're going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. I don't think you want to be on the receiving end of this thing, but changes had to be made in order to get the job done. And for a flexibility, or rather adjustment side, we're going to give it a 1 out of 5. Or rather 2 out of 5, let's just say that, because you can either remove some of its health or some of its resistances just to make up for the amount of damage you will be doing to the opponents. And as for a boost build, we believe that 9,240 health and 2,900 attack respectively is what's needed to kill Impelorex confidently. Now, let us download all this information into the computer and reveal who our 4th contestant of the day is. The Ankylos Lux. The Emperor Crocodilian himself, Imperatosuchus, something that reigned king on the meta when it came out, and for months it dominated until it too eventually succumbed to power creep. However, now we will be bringing it back to life on the analysis platform and giving it the buff it deserves. So, to all the people out there who love Imperatosuchus, and I know there's one out there that goes in every server begging for an Imperato buff, you know who you are, we will now be giving it the love it deserves. The tiger treatment, if you will. So, the buff follows as such. 5,100 health, 1,500 attack, 116 speed, 25% armor, 20% crit chance. And because we wanted to be the bane of Spinotops and Impelorex, we decided to give it the current abilities. Reinforcing Deceleration Strike. Seen previously on Fierce Decelerating Strike, however now you will be increasing your armor by 15%. And because our objective is to kill Spinotops, we decided to give Death Roll a little bit of love. So we added a remove increased speed component to this move, just so you'll be able to remove that speed that Spinotops gains after using Ferocious Charge, and you'll be able to slow them down, granting you the ability to kill them with the next move. You will also be Devour healing 50% over the course of 2 turns. On Revenge, however, this is a completely different story, because now you are targeting all opponents, nullifying positive effects, attacking for 2.25x, and your bleed will be now increased to 40%, and you reduce their speed by 100%. This is going to be a cooldown of 2, whereas non-revenge is a cooldown of 1. Now onto the fun stuff. We will be giving Basque the Force Swapping ability. This is ultimately what will be killing Spinotops and essentially anything that crosses its path once it gets to this move. Because we don't want it to be a busted ass force swapper, we added a delay, and we mainly added the force swap because Crocs nowadays seem to be having this phase of force swapping. So now you have a 75% chance to stun your opponent, you will be increasing your damage by 50%, and you will be force swapping them out. And this works very well in tandem with the unescape we gave it. We also gave it something called Terrorizing Rampage. You just heal 1x and reduce their healing by 100%. This has a delay of 1 and a cooldown of 1. You still maintain defense, shatter, and counterattack, but now you have an unescape called Jawlog Unescape. We followed and took a little bit of inspiration from Hydra Boa, so now you do a defense shattering impact unescape, you heal 1x, and you increase your damage by 25%. This just allows you to punish your opponent and ultimately kill Spinotops. This is a force to be reckoned with, and the Croc is now ready to roll. Let's see what it can do on the ranking portion. Right off the gate, I'm just going to let you know you need a very specific build for Imperato in order to kill a Spinotops. Around about 9,200 health, just to tank a tier 17 attack Spino at tier 4 plus the counter, just so you can live to do the Basque. You also need 2,900 attack, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to kill it. Well, you could, but you still need attack anyway to do damage. On the synergy side of things, we'll give it a 3 out of 5. Force swapping is such a strong mechanic, and because of its unescape working well in tandem with each other, it grants it that placement. Competitiveness and head-to-head both get a 5 out of 5. I don't need to say anything. It force swaps the opponent, deals tons of damage. Need I say more? On the fun side of things, depending on who you are, if you like force swapping, if you don't, this is the creature for you, and if you just love big Crocs, this is also another creature for you. However, taking that much damage is something that the opponent will probably not be too pleased with. Flexibility side of things just barely squeaks its way into a 4.5 out of 5. This creature is going to be doing tons of damage, and it does have a little bit of counters when it comes to Cunnings. However, I'm pretty sure it does kill Namen Rex on Revenge, so we're going to need to solve that in the next video, maybe. And on the flexibility or adjustment side, we'll be giving it a 2.5 out of 5. I don't see this thing being nerfed, but if it does get nerfed, it will most likely be an attack stat nerf or an unescape one. So we will now be downloading that information into the computer, and we will get into the matchups. However, we need to address one thing. We need to address other creatures that did not make this list. It was hard not to include all of these in today's video, but there's a reason why they became honorable mentions. Hydra Boa, Referenantum, Scorpius Rex Gen 3, Albertosavia, and Smilonemes. The reason why they didn't make it today was because they had a playstyle that wasn't really all that popular, or their overall popularity wasn't as high as the creatures featured today. If you guys, however, want a video where we buff Hydra Boa and Referenantum to counterbalance the 5 of today, you bet your sweet ass cheeks we will get on that. However, without further ado, I think I've made you guys wait enough. Let's find out if our creatures passed the test. We are now ready to initialize the simulation and reveal if the buffs did their job. Parasauthops is the first to enter the field. While it only takes down one of the big 5, it dishes out strong damage to Mastodontosaurus and killing Graganith in a head-to-head scenario. Its true strength, however, lies in its revenge and swap potential, offering strategic value over brute force. Ardontognathus flies in next, boasting a much more aggressive toolkit with better reliability and output. It shines especially against Graganith and Mastodontosaurus. However, it requires smarter, more precise play to handle Atremolestes, Spinotops, and Impellerex. Despite that, its ability to consistently thread all 5 giants earns it a high position in our rebalancing lineup. The Bear King himself, Arctovasilas, our first Apex candidate, its performance hinges on calculated RNG and clever 50-50 reads. Whilst it struggles against Atremolestes, it decisively defeats both Impellerex and Spinotops, whilst even putting serious pressure on Very Gymnasto, a heavy hitter with surprising adaptability. Ankylos Lux penetrates its way onto here, looking deceptively tame on paper. However, its affliction mechanics and raw stats make it the first creature to successfully eliminate Atremolestes, whilst also overpowering Mastodontosaurus. It too walks a thin line against Spinotops and Impello, relying on smart reads, while Rhyganath is its only bane. And last but not least, the Emperor Crocodile Imperatosuchus, with arguably being the hardest hitter on this list. It comes equipped with force swap capabilities that carry it hard, and with the right boost spread, it defeats Ampelorex, Spinotops, and Mastodontosaurus whilst dragging Grid in a brutal stalemate, with Atromalistes being its only true killer, assuming it lands the stun on Imperato, which manages to stop it dead in its tracks. So ladies and gentlemen, did these 5 pass the objective of today? Well, yes, hold on, I'm getting a call on my phone. It's time to show the world what you can do.